Hello and welcome here to Tokyo CB, and welcome back to the channel here for another video. And it's been a few days since the last time I uploaded. I had some family problems, so I've been away from the channel for a few days, but since then we have completed the signings of Umtiti and also Lucas Digne, who has joined the club. That was a little bit of a shock deal. That was one that went through very quickly without an awful lot of rumours. I'll be bringing a news sort of update on that in the next few days or so, possibly another video on him. But what we're going to be focusing on this video is the pre-season schedule, because some players did return today for first team training, and there's going to be more and more players returning now for the upcoming games, of which starts in just over 10 days time, our first pre-season match. So we're starting to get back into it now. The international games, of course, finished a few weeks ago, and it's starting to get back to club football now. A few sides, it's certainly in the English side of the game, have started their pre-season schedules already. One thing that I did mention before, which is very good, is the fact that we are staying very close to home. You know, our friendlies are in England, they're across Europe, but we're not going to be flying long distances, we're not going to be suffering from jet lag, we're not going to be making big trips around the world in different time zones. We are going to be sticking very close to Spain, not travelling an awful long way, and that will certainly help the players. After a very long season, it has been for them. Many of them have played all season long and then gone on to play international matches, so it's good that those players are going to have an extended rest. But those who did come back to training today were Luis Suarez, Munir El-Haddadi, who also signed a new contract today, along with Sergi Sampa, who also returned to first team training today. He is now a first team player. Alen Halilovic also, although he could be completed a move to Hamburg on a permanent deal for 5 million very soon, but we will have a buyback clause on him. Alex Vidal also returned today. Mathieu Masip, Denis Suarez, Sergio Roberto and Adriano all returned today, although the club are still trying to sell Adriano to Lazio, although it is proven very hard work, because Barça want 2 million, Lazio don't want to pay anything. I think that one could come down to us actually selling Adriano for nothing and just getting him off the wage bill, because of course we have a left back now. We've signed Lucas Digne, he has come in, he will be a player for the coming season. So they returned today for training. They went through a number of tests at the facility. They went through a number of drills there, and they did take part in some training sessions with Luis Enrique. The next player to arrive back on July the 25th will be Arda Turan. Of course, he went out in the group stage of the Euro 2016 with Turkey. Then on August the 1st, there's quite a lot of players also returning, all of the Spanish players and some of the players who competed in the Copa America: Piqué, Rakitic, Busquets, Iniesta, Messi, Bravo, Mascherano, Alba and Thomas Vermaelen. And then a week later, on the 8th of August, the final batch of players, those who have been recently signed or reached the latter stages of the Euros, the likes of Ter Stegen, Umtiti, Digne, Teo, Douglas and Montoya. Douglas, Teo and Montoya have all been given an extended break up until the 8th of August, and it's believed the reason for that is because the club are trying to sell them. They're trying to negotiate a move away from the club, and they'd rather them focus on that rather than coming into training. Two players who are not on that list are Rafinha and Neymar, who will both be taking part in the Olympics in Rio this summer. They will be playing for the Brazilian national team, and they will not arrive back until several weeks after that date, and they will miss the beginning of the season. But let's have a look at the friendlies that are coming up. There's some very interesting games. Pre-season for me is a bit of a waste of time, apart from getting up match fitness, apart from getting up that sort of feeling that you're in the match groove again. I think they're pretty pointless games. You remember last season, I remember people freaking out when we were sort of drawing and losing games. There was Fiorentina, Chelsea was in there when we got beaten by Chelsea, Manchester United I think we drew against. So I think last season our pre-season schedule mainly resulted in us not winning games, but certainly in the forthcoming season it didn't affect us whatsoever. But on the 30th of July we will be taking on Celtic in the International Champions Cup. That will be a very interesting game against a club who has a lot of tradition, and certainly that we've faced a few times in the past. That'll be at 7 o'clock local time. And then again we play in the International Champions Cup against Leicester City, the Premier League champions. That will be on the 3rd of August. So that one coming just a few days after our first game. The games come rather thick and fast when they do come around. We start on the 30th, and then in the space of about 10 days or so we've played 3 matches. So the players will be very heavily rotated. In friendlies you always see it at half time. Sometimes you change the full team, the full 11. So it's going to be interesting to see what sort of players players that Lucho chooses and whether he will introduce any players from Barcelona B into that sort of lineup. So we got Leicester on the 3rd of August, then on the 6th of August, again, just 3 days later, we played Liverpool again in the International Champions Cup, and that will be coming at 6 o'clock local time. So those are the three games that we're playing in the International Champions Cup. Then, of course, at the Camp Nou, we have the usual Jean Gamper game. Now, that will be on the 10th. So again, just 4 days later from the Liverpool game, we're going to be playing the Gamper Trophy at the Camp Nou. That'll be 8:30 local time against Sampdoria. And then we're on to the competitive stuff. Then we are on to the Spanish Super Cup, which kicks off just 4 days after that game. That's on the 14th of August. The first leg will be live from the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan against Sevilla, and then the second leg will be just 3 days later on the 17th of August at the Camp Nou for the second leg of the Spanish Super Cup. So like I say, once you kick off on the 30th of July, the games come very thick and fast. Players will be arriving back to training and competing in games. A lot of people are saying, when will Messi and Iniesta, when will those types of players play the games? They're certainly not going to be available for the Celtic game. And I would say possibly some minutes against Leicester, but certainly I highly doubt that you'll see any of them starting in that match. That's just 2 days after they return to training. But I would then expect to start seeing those players feature in the game against Liverpool, and also the Gamper Trophy is the game that you really want to warm up and start hitting top gear. And then we've got the very games very close to the season. The Super Cup kicks off. Is going to be very difficult against Sevilla because they've spent well this summer. They've made some really good signings, and they've got a new manager as well. Unai Emery's gone to PSG. They've got George Sampaoli there now, and he's going to be giving them a lot of fighting spirit, and they're going to be well up for that game. And I do like to win the Super Cup. A lot of people think in Spain that it's not really worth anything, that it's the equivalent to what is the Community Shield in England, but that may well be the case. But at the same time, it's still a competitive match. It's still a trophy that goes in the cabinet, and it's still something that's going to help us gain momentum and confidence going into the season ahead. So I'd certainly like to win that if we can. We played them in the last game of the season in the Copa del Rey final. That went all the way to extra time. That was an enthralling match, it really was. It had a bit of everything, so it's going to be very interesting to see how those games turn out. But I would just like to see a lot of the young players, as always in pre-season. When you don't get the big players coming back into training, you get to see some of the younger players, you get to see some of the players from Barcelona B. The likes of Samper is going to really want to try and prove himself. The likes of Alex Vidal, the same goes for him. Players that don't usually get an awful lot of game time, that aren't really in Luis Enrique's mind of thinking, they're going to be wanting to play as well as they possibly can to convince him that as the season approaches, they do have what it takes to be in the lineup and consistently play at the top level. But like I say, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on these results. If we do end up losing to Celtic, Leicester, Liverpool, Sampdoria, I wouldn't put too much on that. It's all about gaining that match fitness. It's all about getting into that spirit again and getting that competitive nature about you. It's not always about the results. We're going to see a lot of different players compete, no doubt, and as I say, the English clubs did start their pre-season schedules a lot earlier than we have. So for instance, when we play the likes of Celtic, Leicester and Liverpool, those will have already played a number of pre-season games by the time they play us. In fact, Celtic are already playing European qualifiers for the Champions League next season. They did suffer quite a shock result in one of those games, but they're going to be taken on in the second leg very soon. So I'd expect those teams coming into those games to be pretty fresh, to be more advanced in their pre-season stages than we are, but at the same time I'd still expect us to give them a good game and certainly have a good run out for a number of players. And like I say, I think the game against Sampdoria at the Camp Nou, the Gamp is always a good occasion, and there's some really good games that have been there in the past, and last season I remember Roma was there and we absolutely hammered them. So if we can do something like that again, that would be really good, because I think, again, a few days before the Super Cup, the Gamper Trophy, the Camp Nou is usually pretty full because you get a lot of tourists coming over for the Gamper Trophy, and I think if we could win that, get some confidence going, get some players on the score sheet, that'll be a really good match to go into the Super Cup with some good confidence. So that's our pre-season schedule. Like I say, a number of players have already returned to training today. They went through the tests, they then started to do some things on the pitch as well today, and in the coming weeks and in the coming days, there's going to be more and more players returning to training and getting into the thing again of playing club football. It is nearly back. We are nearly upon us. Finally, after a summer of international football, which didn't really work out very well for anyone apart from Claudio Bravo, Lionel Messi suffered yet more heartbreak with Argentina. Spain exited the tournament very early as well in the European Championships. We've made some very good signings, and I would certainly expect one more signing at least from us in this window. We're still chasing a striker. We're still chasing a forward option. Luciano Vietto has been very, very heavily linked at the moment, but as of yet, there is no further developments on that story. Leave your thoughts about the pre-season schedule. Leave your thoughts about what you see these games going like. How do you expect us to approach them? And what players do you want to see playing in these games? Who do you want to see have some minutes? And if there's any B players that you think should be included in these squads for these pre-season games, please let me know down below. I will see you very, very soon. But until then, as always, Vesca, El Barça.